The avoidant has a secret they'll never admit to you and barely admit to themselves. They're addicted to your energy. Not to you as a person necessarily, not to the relationship, not to partnership or commitment or intimacy, but to the specific energy you provide, the attention you direct toward them, the effort you invest in understanding them, the patience you demonstrate with their limitations, the hope you maintain that they'll eventually change. The avoidant is consuming your energy like a drug, getting high on your pursuit while giving nothing substantial in return, and they're as dependent on this energetic supply as any addict is dependent on their substance of choice. But unlike substance addicts who acknowledge their addiction and might seek help, the avoidance addiction is completely covert. They hide it behind claims of independence. They disguise it as detachment. They perform not needing you while secretly being completely dependent on the steady stream of your energy flowing toward them. And the addiction is particularly insidious because the avoidant isn't addicted to reciprocal exchange. They're addicted specifically to unreciprocated energy, to receiving without giving, to being the object of someone's attention without having to be vulnerable in return. The avoidance addiction to your energy is why they can't fully leave even when they can't show up. They withdraw, they create distance, they become cold and unavailable, but they don't completely disappear. They maintain threads of connection. They breadcrumb occasionally. They keep minimal contact that ensures you're still thinking about them, still available, still directing some portion of your energy in their direction. The partial presence is the addict maintaining access to their supply. Complete absence would mean complete withdrawal from the drug of your energy, and the avoidant isn't ready for that. They need the hit they get from knowing you care, from knowing you're thinking about them, from knowing you haven't moved on. The addiction keeps them hovering in your orbit even when they claim they don't want relationship, even when they insist they need space, even when they act like you don't matter to them. The secret addiction is also why the avoidant panics when you withdraw your energy. When you stop pursuing, stop caring, stop directing your attention toward them, the avoidant experiences withdrawal symptoms as real as any physical addiction. They become anxious, desperate, unstable. They reach out with increasing frequency. They can't focus on other things. They're obsessed with regaining access to the energy supply you've cut off, and their desperation during your withdrawal reveals what their detachment was concealing. They were never unbothered by you, never unaffected, never truly independent. They were dependent on your energy the entire time. They just hid the dependency behind performance of not caring. The addiction was secret even from them until the supply was cut off, and withdrawal forced them to face what they'd been denying. They needed what you were giving them more than they could admit. The energetic supply that maintains their false self. The avoidant is addicted to your energy because your energy is what allows them to maintain their false self, the identity they've constructed to hide their wounded true self. The false self is the independent one, the strong one, the one who doesn't need anyone. But maintaining this identity requires enormous energy because it contradicts the avoidant's actual internal experience of neediness, fear, and dependence. Your energy directed toward them provides the fuel that keeps the false self functioning. When you pursue them, you're confirming they're desirable. When you're patient with their limitations, you're confirming they're acceptable as they are. When you maintain hope they'll change, you're confirming they're worth waiting for. All of these confirmations are energetic food that nourishes the false self, allowing the avoidant to continue performing independence while being secretly dependent on your validation. Your energy is particularly valuable to the avoidant because it's unconditional supply. You're giving without them having to reciprocate. You're providing attention without requiring equivalent attention in return. You're investing effort without demanding equivalent effort from them. This one-sided flow is perfect for the avoidance addiction because reciprocal exchange would require vulnerability. If they had to give energy back to get your energy, they'd have to show need, reveal feelings, demonstrate care. But your willingness to give without requiring equivalent return means they can consume your energy while maintaining their defended position. They're getting the benefits of being cared about without the cost of caring back. They're receiving validation without having to validate. They're being energetically fed while remaining emotionally closed. The avoidance false self also requires your energy because the false self has no internal energy source. Real strength comes from inside. Real independence is self-sustaining. Real detachment doesn't need external validation, but the avoidance performed strength, performed independence, and performed detachment are all hollow constructions that require constant external reinforcement to remain standing. Without your energy propping up these performances, they collapse. The avoidance false self is like a building that looks solid from the outside, but is actually held up entirely by external supports. Your energy is those supports. Remove them, and the structure falls, revealing there's nothing solid underneath, just fear and need and dependence. The avoidant has been hiding from themselves and from you. Your energy is also maintaining the avoidant's false self by allowing them to avoid their wounds. As long as your energy is flowing toward them, as long as you're pursuing and hoping and trying, the avoidant doesn't have to face their core wound of feeling unlovable or unworthy. Your consistent attention is evidence they're lovable. Your continued pursuit is proof they're worthy. Your energy is covering up the wound, numbing the pain, providing temporary relief from the shame the avoidant carries about their fundamental inadequacy. But it's just temporary relief. The wound isn't healing. It's just being covered by your energy, and the moment your energy withdraws, the wound is exposed again, and the pain is as acute as it ever was. Maybe more acute because the contrast between being energetically fed and being energetically starved is sharp and undeniable. The specific ways they consume your energy. The avoidant consumes your energy through your pursuit of them. Every time you reach out, every message you send that they respond to minimally or not at all, every attempt you make to close the distance they've created, you're giving them energy. Your pursuit is communicating you're thinking about them, you care about them, you want them. And the avoidant is consuming this communication like food. They're feeding on your desire for them. They're nourishing themselves on your continued investment. And they're doing it while giving nothing back, while remaining distant, while being unavailable. The pursuit is one-directional energy flow from you to them, and the avoidant is addicted to receiving this flow without reciprocating. The avoidant also consumes your energy through your emotional labor. You're the one trying to understand their patterns. You're reading about attachment theory. You're giving them patience while they work through their fear. You're accommodating their need for space. You're managing your own emotions so you don't pressure them. All of this is energy expenditure on your part, with no equivalent energy expenditure from them. The avoidant is receiving the benefits of your emotional work without doing equivalent work themselves. They're being understood without having to understand. They're being accommodated without having to accommodate. They're taking in all the effort you're expending while remaining effort-free themselves. Your energy is also consumed through your hope. The hope you maintain that they'll change, that they'll eventually be ready, that the relationship has potential if you're just patient enough. This hope is energy. Hope is active. It's forward-looking. It's invested in future possibility. And the avoidant is feeding on your hope without offering any hope of their own. They're not hoping for the relationship. They're not actively working toward being different. They're just existing in their defended state while your hope about them keeps you engaged and keeps energy flowing in their direction. Your hope is doing all the relational work of believing in possibility while the avoidant does nothing except exist as the object of that hope. The avoidant consumes your energy through your waiting. Waiting is not passive. Waiting is active energy expenditure. You're holding space for them. You're keeping yourself available. You're not fully moving on because you're waiting to see if they'll step up. All of this waiting is energy directed toward the avoidant, energy they're consuming without acknowledging. They know you're waiting even if it's never explicitly stated. They can feel your availability, and they're drawing on that energetic availability to maintain their own sense of security and importance. Your waiting is feeding them the message that they matter, that they're worth waiting for, that they have value. And they're consuming this message without ever confirming they're worthy of the wait, or that the wait will result in anything you actually want. The withdrawal symptoms when you cut off supply. When you stop giving the avoidant your energy, when you stop pursuing and hoping and waiting and doing all the emotional labor, the avoidant experiences withdrawal symptoms that are violent and destabilizing. The first symptom is confusion. The avoidant can't understand why you've stopped giving them energy. They took your energy for granted. They assumed it would always be there. The withdrawal of your energy doesn't make sense to them because they weren't consciously aware they were dependent on it. They thought they were fine without you, but suddenly they're not fine, and they don't understand why the change in your energy is affecting them so profoundly. The confusion quickly gives way to anxiety. The avoidant becomes anxious about your absence, about the withdrawal of your attention, about not having access to the energy supply they were dependent on. The anxiety manifests as obsessive thinking about you. They're checking your social media constantly. They're asking mutual friends about you. They're thinking about you when they should be focusing on other things. The obsession is the anxiety looking for a fix, looking for any hit of the energy you use to provide freely. The avoidant is like an addict searching for their drug, and the searching is consuming them in ways that prove how dependent they were on something they claimed not to need. The anxiety escalates into desperation when the avoidant realizes you're serious about the withdrawal, that you're not just temporarily upset or playing hard to get. You've actually cut off the energy supply permanently. This realization creates desperate attempts to restore access. The avoidant reaches out with increasing frequency. They try different strategies to get your attention. They might apologize, might express vulnerability they never expressed before, might make promises about changing. But all of this is the addict's desperation to restore supply, not genuine readiness to reciprocate energy or to be in healthy relationship. The desperation proves the addiction, but desperation doesn't equal transformation. It's just withdrawal symptom, not evidence of healing. The withdrawal symptoms also include the avoidant experiencing emotions they successfully avoided while they had access to your energy. They feel the core wound of unworthiness that your energy was covering. They feel the loneliness their performed independence was disguising. They feel the need they've been denying. All of these feelings surface because the numbing agent, your energy, has been removed. And the feelings are overwhelming because the avoidant has no practice managing them. They've been managing life by consuming your energy rather than by developing their own internal resources for emotional regulation. Withdrawal forces them to either develop those resources or find a new energy supply, and most avoidants choose the latter, finding someone new to pursue them rather than doing the internal work to become self-sustaining. The pattern of seeking new supply. When you cut off your energy, when the avoidant can no longer consume what you are providing, they typically don't become independent. They seek new supply. They find someone else to pursue them, someone else whose energy they can consume, someone else who will do the emotional labor and the hoping and the waiting. The new person is just replacement supply, not evidence the avoidant has moved on or found something better. They're just finding a new source for the addiction you were feeding. And the pattern they establish with the new supply will be identical to the pattern they had with you, because the pattern is about consuming energy without reciprocating, about being pursued without being available, about maintaining false self through other people's effort. The avoidance need for new supply is why they often move on to new relationships quickly after endings. It's not that they didn't care about you or that the new person is better than you. It's that they're in energetic withdrawal, and they need a new source immediately to avoid feeling the feelings that withdrawal creates. The new relationship is methadone to the heroin of your energy. It's substitute supply that prevents them from having to face their actual addiction or do the work to become self-sustaining. The quick replacement is evidence of how dependent they were on external energy, not evidence that you were replaceable or inadequate. The pattern of seeking new supply also reveals that the avoidant is incapable of real aloneness. True independence is the ability to be alone and be genuinely okay. But the avoidant can't be alone without an energy source. They need someone in the background providing attention, hope, pursuit, emotional labor. Without that supply, they fall apart. So they can never be truly alone. They jump from supply source to supply source, relationship to relationship, person to person, always needing someone's energy to maintain their false self. The constant need for new supply proves their independence is performance. Real independence wouldn't need constant external validation and energy input to exist. The new supply the avoidant seeks is also typically someone with similar traits to you. Patient, understanding, willing to accept their limitations, secure enough to give without requiring equivalent return. The avoidant is attracted to the same type repeatedly not because they have a type based on physical features or personality traits, but because they have a type based on who will provide the energy they're addicted to. They need someone who will pursue them, who will hope for them, who will wait for them, who will do emotional labor without demanding reciprocation. You weren't unique in this role. You were interchangeable with anyone else who would provide the same energetic supply. And recognizing this is painful but clarifying. The avoidant wasn't in relationship with you as unique person. They were in relationship with you as energy source, and they'll find another source once you stop providing what they need. The difference between love and addiction. Understanding that the avoidant is addicted to your energy rather than in love with you is crucial distinction. Love is about reciprocity, about mutual care, about both people giving and receiving in balance. Addiction is about consumption, about taking without giving, about using someone as resource to meet your needs without meeting theirs. The avoidant might have feelings for you. They might care about you in their limited way, but their primary relationship to you is addictive rather than loving. They need what you provide. They're dependent on your energy. And when you withdraw it, they experience withdrawal rather than loss. The difference matters because you can't heal an addiction through more love. More energy from you just feeds the addiction deeper. Love makes you want to give to the other person. Addiction makes you want to take from them. The avoidance behavior consistently demonstrates taking rather than giving. They take your attention without giving equivalent attention. They take your emotional labor without doing equivalent labor. They take your hope without offering hope of their own. They take your availability without being available themselves. The relationship is one directional flow of energy from you to them, which is the definition of addictive consumption rather than loving exchange. And recognizing this helps you understand why nothing you gave was ever enough. Addicts are never satisfied. The addiction always requires more. You could have given more energy, been more patient, hoped harder, waited longer, and it would never have been enough because addiction is insatiable. Love grows when it's reciprocated. Addiction intensifies when it's enabled. If the avoidant loved you, your reciprocation of that love would deepen the connection. But because the avoidant is addicted to your energy, your giving them energy just intensified their addiction without creating real intimacy. You were enabling their addiction every time you pursued them, every time you did emotional labor, they didn't reciprocate, every time you hoped they'd change, without requiring evidence they were actually changing. The enabling wasn't bad intent on your part. You thought you were loving them, but you were actually feeding an addiction that prevented them from having to face their wounds or develop capacity for real relationship. The difference between love and addiction is also evident in what the avoidant misses when you're gone. If they loved you, they'd miss you as a person, your specific qualities, your particular way of being, the unique connection you shared. But what the avoidant actually misses is the energy supply you provided. They miss being pursued. They miss someone hoping for them. They miss the validation that your attention provided. They miss feeling important to someone. All of this is missing the function you served, not missing you as irreplaceable individual. And this is why the avoidant can replace you relatively easily with new supply. The new person can provide the same functions, can give the same energy, can serve the same purpose. You are never irreplaceable to the avoidant because they were never relating to you as unique person. They were relating to you as energy source, and sources are replaceable as long as they provide the same supply. The impossibility of feeding their addiction long-term. The avoidance addiction to your energy is impossible to feed long-term without destroying yourself. Addiction is insatiable. No matter how much energy you give, the avoidant will need more. No matter how patient you are, they'll require more patience. No matter how much you accommodate, they'll need more accommodation. The addiction can never be satisfied, because satisfaction would require the avoidant facing their wounds and healing them, and avoiding exactly that is what the addiction is for. The addiction is the avoidance strategy for never having to face their core shame, their fear of vulnerability, their need for others. As long as they're consuming your energy, they can avoid their internal work. And as long as they're avoiding their internal work, they'll need more of your energy to maintain the avoidance. Feeding the addiction also requires you to abandon yourself. You have to suppress your needs to meet theirs. You have to give without receiving. You have to hope without evidence. You have to wait without timeline. You have to provide emotional labor without rest. You have to maintain energy output without replenishment. No one can sustain this indefinitely without becoming depleted, resentful, depressed. The relationship with an avoidant who's addicted to your energy will drain you completely if you let it, and the draining will never result in the avoidant being satisfied or the relationship becoming reciprocal. The addiction doesn't lead to healing. It leads to your depletion while the avoidant remains unchanged. The impossibility of long-term feeding is also because your energy eventually runs out. You can't give indefinitely without receiving. You can't pursue indefinitely without being pursued back. You can't hope indefinitely without seeing progress. You can't wait indefinitely without knowing what you're waiting for. Eventually, your energy depletes. You have nothing left to give. You're exhausted, burned out, empty. And at this point, one of two things happens. Either you withdraw your energy to protect yourself, or you continue trying to give from a depleted state and you damage yourself seriously. The first choice is self-preservation. The second choice is self-destruction. And the avoidance addiction puts you in position of having to choose between yourself and them, which is not a choice that should exist in healthy relationship. The impossibility is also that feeding the addiction prevents the avoidant from ever getting what they actually need, which is healing. As long as you're providing energy that covers their wounds, they have no motivation to heal the wounds. As long as your attention is validating them, they don't have to face their core shame. As long as your hope is sustaining them, they don't have to develop internal resources. Your energy is like pain medication that reduces symptoms without treating underlying condition. It provides temporary relief while allowing the actual problem to fester untreated. The kindest thing you can do for an addict is stop enabling the addiction, but stopping feels cruel because it means watching someone you care about experience withdrawal. Yet continuing to enable is crueler in the long run because it prevents them from ever hitting bottom and potentially getting help. The only solution is withdrawal of supply. The only way to address the avoidant's secret addiction to your energy is complete withdrawal of the supply. Not reducing it, not making it conditional, not giving it intermittently. Complete withdrawal. You stop pursuing, you stop hoping, you stop waiting, you stop doing emotional labor, you stop being available, you cut off every form of energy that was flowing from you to them. This withdrawal will create the symptoms described earlier: confusion, anxiety, desperation, but those symptoms are not your responsibility. Those are the addict's withdrawal, and withdrawal is necessary prerequisite for any possibility of recovery. Complete withdrawal is also necessary to protect yourself. You cannot continue being energy source for someone who's consuming without reciprocating. You cannot sustain the one-directional flow indefinitely. Withdrawal isn't punishment of the avoidant. It's protection of yourself. It's recognizing that you deserve reciprocal relationship, that your energy is valuable and shouldn't be given to someone who doesn't value it, that your effort should be matched, not taken for granted. Withdrawal is you choosing yourself, and choosing yourself is the only healthy response to someone whose addiction to your energy was preventing them from having to choose anything at all. The withdrawal also creates the only conditions under which the avoidant might do their work. When you withdraw your energy, the avoidant is forced to face what your energy was covering: their wounds, their fears, their needs. And facing these things is what creates the possibility that they'll seek help, get therapy, do the work to heal. Most avoidants won't do this work. Most will just seek new supply. But the few who do get help, who do heal, who do develop capacity for real relationship, they all start with loss, with hitting bottom, with having their addiction supply cut off in ways that force them to face themselves. Your withdrawal might be the catalyst that eventually saves them, though you won't be around to see it and you shouldn't wait to find out. Withdrawal also teaches you something crucial. You can survive without them. While you're feeding their addiction, while your energy is flowing toward them, you're not developing your own internal resources. You're focused outward, on them, on the relationship, on hoping and waiting and trying. But withdrawal forces you to turn inward. You have to develop your own sources of validation, your own emotional regulation strategies, your own sense of worth that doesn't depend on whether someone receives your energy appreciatively. Withdrawal is your opportunity to become actually independent rather than codependently attached to someone who was consuming your energy without reciprocating. And real independence is what you need. not to attract an avoidant who won't consume you, but to recognize avoidance early and refuse to make your energy available to people who only want to take. The freedom that comes from recognizing the addiction. Recognizing that the avoidant was addicted to your energy rather than in love with you is painful initially, but ultimately freeing. It means you weren't inadequate, you weren't too much or not enough. You weren't wrong for having needs. You were just dealing with someone whose relationship to you was fundamentally disordered, who was using you as resource rather than relating to you as partner. And recognizing this allows you to release the relationship without the usual second guessing and self-blame. You can't fix addiction by being better supply. You can't heal someone who's using you to avoid healing. You weren't the problem. Their addiction was the problem. And their addiction has nothing to do with your worth. The freedom also includes understanding that nothing you did created the addiction. The avoidant was addicted before you met them. They were addicted in their previous relationships. They'll be addicted in their next relationships. The addiction is their pattern, their strategy, their way of avoiding their wounds. You didn't cause it by being too giving or too patient or too hopeful. The addiction would have existed regardless of who you were or what you did. And this understanding releases you from the burden of thinking you should have done something differently. There was nothing you could have done differently that would have changed the fundamental dynamic of them consuming your energy without reciprocating. Recognizing the addiction also frees you to find actual partnership. Partnership is reciprocal. Both people give and receive. Both people do emotional labor. Both people hope for and invest in the relationship. Both people's energy flows in both directions, creating mutual nourishment rather than one person depleting to feed another. After being with an avoidant who was addicted to your energy, real partnership might feel unfamiliar at first. Having someone give back, having effort reciprocated, having mutual investment, it might feel too good to be true after the one-directional flow you were accustomed to. But this is what healthy relationship actually is, and you deserve it. You deserve someone who receives your energy gratefully and gives their own energy generously in return, someone who values what you offer by offering equivalent value back, someone in relationship with you rather than addicted to what you provide. The avoidant has a secret addiction to your energy, and the addiction masqueraded as relationship while actually being consumption. They weren't loving you. They were using you. They weren't building with you. They were taking from you. They weren't in partnership with you. They were dependent on you in ways they denied while being completely unavailable for the interdependence that real partnership requires. Understanding their addiction helps you see clearly what you are actually dealing with. Not a person too wounded to love, but functioning in relationship, but a person so wounded they related to people as resources to consume rather than as humans to connect with. The addiction explains everything: the taking without giving, the consuming your energy without reciprocating, the need for your availability while offering none of their own, the panic when you withdrew your energy, the seeking of new supply when you were no longer available.